So here in the US, the days of finding a well-priced classic car, they're almost non-existent. But Mexico remains a virtual gold mine of forgotten and undervalued classics.
Oh, what about that one over there?
I like that. This is killing.
But hunting down these cars and getting them over the border is only half the battle.
Oh my gosh, I've been there!
To a garage.
Mexico. Welcome to Cordkillers, the show about watching the stuff you love when you want, where you want, however you want. I'm Tom Merritt.
Hey, I'm Brian Brushwood, but more importantly, I'm somebody who has driven up and down the I-35 corridor, the one that leads to 281, that leads all the way down to the Rio Grande Valley, which leads to where all cars go to heaven. I cannot count the number of times that I've seen 1, 2, up to 3 cars in tow on my way down because my wife comes from the Rio Grande Valley. This seems like an excellent idea for a show because I have lived for 20 years seeing, you know, all these cars that are mostly working or mostly in shape vanish down to Mexico. I would love to know their story after that. And it looks like whatever I just saw is going to tell that story. Is that right, Bryce?
I don't know that I don't know that there's going to be as much of a history lesson on this. This is a trailer for Tex-Mex Motors coming to Netflix. So yeah, this is more of the restoration sort of show. I maybe there will be some amount of like, this was this type of car and this is the history of this type of car, but I don't know how much it'll be like, well, my grandfather left it in the barn here 45 years.
Oh, no. Like, I've already lived that part. What I want to know is what happens to those cars after they go to Mexico. And that seems to be what this is about.
Well,
I like that you called it car heaven, not the boneyard, like most people do. It's much more positive.
Well, this one, they actually bring the cars up from Mexico and then repair them here in the States.
Yeah.
So check that out. That comes out to Netflix June 9th, Tex-Mex Motors.
All right. Let's get right into our primary target, Disney.
Got him.
So in the continuing narrative of everyone pretending like Netflix is in trouble, Disney actually in trouble. Disney lost streaming subscribers for the second quarter in a row, falling by 4 million across its properties to 157.8 million. In the continuing narrative of sometimes numbers are not as bad as they look, the losses, again, for the second quarter came mostly from declines in Disney Hotstar, which lost its rights internationally to show Indian Premier League cricket matches. And if you're unaware, IPL, incredibly popular in multiple places, not just in India. So losing that, they expected to lose some stuff. They did all right domestically in the US. They added a few million, probably not as much as they'd like. Disney CEO Bob Iger told investors Wednesday, though, that the company plans to offer a combined Disney Plus and Hulu app. Disney Plus and Hulu would still be offered individually as well. Iger also indicated that negotiations with Comcast to buy out its remaining minority stake in Hulu were cordial. So those two statements combined tell me that we are on our way to resolving one of the big things that needs to be resolved before the consolidation begins in the streaming space, which is, Disney buying out the last of Comcast or potentially selling it. But it looks like Disney's going to buy out the last of Comcast. Brian, what do you think about this idea where he said, we're going to combine Disney Plus and Hulu into an app, but you'll still be able to get them individually?
There are complications. As you know, Tom, as a consumer, I like my things simple. So what I'm hearing is there'll be 2 apps, but there'll be a third app that is the 2 apps combined, question mark?
Well, it's actually pretty simple. So you've got an ESPN Plus app, you've got a Disney Plus app, and you've got a Hulu app. And then there'll be a Hulu Disney Plus combined app where you can get Hulu without commercials, Hulu without commercials plus live TV, Hulu with commercials plus live TV. Maybe I'm lost. Where are we going with this?
No. I just want you to keep talking so I can say, pretending to be the dumb guy. So I download the one app and I get everything, at which point you say,
no. I honestly, I'm not sure that Iger explained this the best way he could. Now, I do tend to try to remember that these are investor calls and he's telling investors what they want to hear. They are done publicly, so the rest of us hear them, and everyone else acts as if he was talking to us, that it was like a press conference. It's not. So this may have been the best way to explain it to investors, and later on, they'll explain it in a way that makes sense to us. What he didn't say is that there would be a new app. He said they would offer a combined Disney Plus and Hulu in an app. That app could be Hulu because there's precedent for it already. ESPN Plus is available in an ESPN app or in the Hulu app. So if you subscribe to ESPN Plus, all your ESPN Plus content shows up in Hulu. If I were to just look at the idea of offering Disney Plus in a combined app, I'd say that's what I'd do if I was Disney. I would say, hey, you can get Disney Plus in the Disney Plus app if you're a family and that's what you want. Or you could also add it on to the Hulu app.
Adding on a service to an existing app. I feel like we've talked and experienced this for
ESPN Plus.
Yeah, that's one.
And it seems like it's going well.
Seems like Amazon has been doing this for nigh on a decade now.
Oh, good point. You can also add things onto Apple TV, the app, like Apple TV Plus or Sports or Showtime or Stars. Granted, this is a little different because it doesn't sound like Disney's going to offer other services, at least not yet. Actually, take that back. You can add on Showtime and Stars to the Hulu app.
Simple, Tom. This all sounds very simple right now.
What's complicated about it, though? If you either subscribe into both of the things and you either merge it into Hulu or you say that if you like your streaming app, you can keep it.
Well,
yeah, it only gets complicated when you try to start at what Iger said and circle back around. But I like the way Bryce just said it, which is Hulu is going to become the platform app for Disney, where you can add anything. Showtime? Sure. HBO? Yeah, no problem. Disney Plus, our own service? Yeah, why not? ESPN Plus? Of course, and it becomes the hub app where Disney Plus becomes a specialty app, also similar to what HBO Max is doing with Discovery Plus. When it becomes Max, you'll get the Discovery Plus stuff in Max, or you can just subscribe to Discovery Plus as its own thing.
Hulu is not a bad anchor for the platform app name. I suspect slightly better, except for it'll bump up against the competing space with Apple, would be to call it Plus instead of Hulu. But the reason we're discussing this is because we've seen that once something becomes a chimera of all different sources of content coming in, usually you want to reduce everything to a single identity. And we just saw that with HBO Max plus Discovery content collapsing into Max. That's one word, 3 letters, easy. You could do that under Hulu, but Hulu has adult baggage, which I feel like the advertising that Disney Plus has done has made it more family.
But you're not giving up any brand. You're keeping all of those brands because Hulu still has their TV and VOD content.
Right, but at some point you have so much stuff that it ceases to mean anything. Like a brand that means everything means nothing. Like TV as a brand doesn't, like that's all the content. So you actually want to push back against that. If I was going to place a bet, I would say that they'll collapse not around the word Hulu, but around the word Plus. I think that eventually it's just the app will be called Plus, and it's everything you want within this architecture.
Interesting. I that's not a bad call because that is what's happening, right? Paramount Plus is adding Showtime in. They're not changing the name in that case, but it's becoming one brand. Max becoming one brand. I think they could go that route. I think the other route that I'm starting to wonder if they're going is identifying that we are currently bifurcating into platforms and channels. So Max is a channel and there's sub-channels like Discovery Plus, but what else can you get in Max that isn't from Warner Media? Nothing. It's all Discovery Warner properties. What else can you get in Paramount Plus that isn't a Paramount property? Nothing. It's all Paramount properties. Those are channels that you can add on other places. Paramount Plus can be added to Apple TV Plus. Paramount Plus can be added to Amazon Prime. I think Disney realizes, and Bob Iger realizes, hey, the big money is in being the platform. and you can have your own channel on that. And you know what Apple and Amazon don't have? Multiple lucrative channels. They just have one that they use as kind of a loss leader, Prime Video, Apple TV Plus. If Disney were to turn Hulu into a competitor to Apple TV and Amazon Prime as a platform that you can add other things onto, suddenly they're also able to add things that no one else has, Disney and maybe ESPN, although it would be in their best interest to offer ESPN Plus in other places as well.
Yeah. One final thought.
And maybe they still change that to Plus, by the way. I'm not even ruling that out.
Well, and there's sort of like a big world and small world. In my personal small world, this morning, Bonnie reached out to me, texted me saying, hey, our one kid who watches Hulu is complaining that Hulu isn't working because the credit card's changed or whatever, subscription ran out. Do we want to resubscribe, as she put it, to the thing that used to be free but now costs us $80? And in that moment,
because you've got the live, yeah.
Exactly, right. Because now it's like we, as humans, we like to keep everything simple. In this moment, I'm realizing Hulu might have enough baggage that they might want to abandon it and just go with the word plus, because yes, they'll have to compete with Apple TV, but I think they could win on plus.
The opposite, I mean, that's a really compelling point. If she thinks about it as the thing that used to be free that you now have to pay for. The opposite could also be true for folks who are using Hulu to add all their stuff on already. You're using Amazon for that.
Correct.
But if you were using Hulu, you might see it as, oh, but it's the thing that has all my stuff in it. And if you could add Disney Plus to it now, along with ESPN Plus, you'd probably be more likely to keep it, especially, and everybody in our chat room is like, can you give us a discount? Is adding Disney Plus to Hulu cheaper than going Disney Plus alone? And yeah, if you're following the bundle logic, then it should be. That makes sense that they would do that as well.
Yeah, I think we're seeing this is one of the benefits of doing this show for 14 years, Tom, is that we get to see the balkanization of everything. Everything's splitting into a billion different fiefdoms, and now I feel like we're seeing the great consolidation. Yeah. And I feel like it's a race to create a brand that is, again, as simple as possible. If I'll place my bet publicly that it won't be under the name Hulu because of the baggage, it would be under the single syllable 4-letter word plus.
Yeah. I have been calling my shot for a while because I think of it less. I rely on you to figure out the brand parts of this stuff. I look at like what's the strategy for keeping it in business and staying ahead, and the money is going to be made on being the platform people add channels to. I feel like it was very telling when they announced Max that they said, we want this to be your everything platform, because they know that people are reducing, that they want less choice. They just want to have one platform, and that's where the money's going to be. Problem is, for Warner Brothers Discovery, they don't have deals to add other things. Disney has a huge advantage in that they're already doing it with Hulu. They can add live TV. And if you add Disney, they can add the one thing that nobody else has, right? They can have an exclusivity to their platform that others don't, the way Apple does, the way Prime Video does. Disney becomes that thing for them. I'm going to throw out a crazy idea for you before we get off this topic. Because Hulu Live has ESPN.
Yeah.
And because cable companies have much less leverage than they used to, and because ESPN is bringing in less revenue than they used to, what if one of the advantages to adding ESPN Plus to Hulu is that you get all of ESPN? Whereas when you add it anywhere else, you're just getting the plus part, not the cable package part.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, if anything, that would make me double down on my prediction that it'll eventually just be called Plus.
But it's something Disney could do. They could say, like, they could say to the cable companies, they can say, well, we're just offering a mini bundle on Hulu Live, which is just sports, right? They could even package in other things that they have the rights to show through Hulu Live and make it a mini bundle and force the cable companies to accept it, because it's like, well, do you not want the money for your sports things, which make you the most money? I don't know. I think there's some really interesting stuff there, and they could be making that part of the conversation with Comcast to get some rights to NBC sports stuff when they do that.
Well, I know from personal experience that there's one type of money I like, and that's money from our bosses, our fabulous, fabulous bosses who keep us loud, live, and independent, who head on over to patreon.com/Cordkillers, who get their own RSS feed, including exclusive access to our After Talk segment. They get the behind the scenes mojo, man. They're great.
Yeah. You want Plus? Just add Patreon. Done. No confusing bundle. You just sign up for patreon.com/Cordkillers and you get Spoilerin time early. You get After Talk. You get the satisfaction of having given value back to a show that's given you value for nothing.
So, okay. So the part of me wants to, just as a joke, rebrand After Talk as Cordkillers Plus. Except for that, it's an actively bad idea.
Yeah, it is a horrible idea. And I also love it as well. Well, the only way to stop us, folks, is to have enough people sign up at patreon.com/Cordkillers. Let's talk about how to watch. I talked about this on Daily Tech News Show last week. Fast Company has an article from Jesus Diaz called "From Netflix to HBO, the Terrible Design of Streaming is Ruining TV." I may depart from Mr. Diaz that it's ruining TV, but I thought a lot of the complaints listed in the article were pretty valid. Landing pages are bad. It's hard to find what you want to continue watching. Apple and Hulu were called out specifically by Diaz as being really bad at this. In fact, if you don't go tweak a setting in Apple TV to make it come up on the main page, you have to go into Apple TV and then like drill down to find it. Disappointing recommendation algorithms, where it's like, you're like, they're recommending that? I already watched it. Or they're recommending that? That sounds horrible. Playback button failure, scrubbing imprecision, all that kind of stuff. Diaz interviewed some experts in user interface to try to figure out why it's bad. And his conclusion, based on what they were telling him, is that it's the tension between a business need and the user need. That hours watched is the most important metric to a company, not series completion. So it's not important to them to get you to continue watching. It's important to them to make you watch more things. So they make you go past new options to get to the continue watching part. And it's hard for user interface to keep up in a very fast changing business like this, where the needs change constantly, where you go from being a niche service to a broad service, all the things that we've been talking about in the first story. So Brian, what do you want streaming services to most improve on? Do you agree with Diaz on this?
Here's what I know for sure is what I'm seeing looks an awful lot like, hey, you showed up, you want content. Here's the content that would take this content.
We want you to watch this.
You want bespoke content? See, buckle in for 11 whole minutes of negotiating menus to find whatever it is you want. Outside of that, maybe just watch Ted Lasso because shut up. That's what we want to push today. It truly is astonishing that it was only in the last few months that Apple added a search button to their Apple TV Plus interface on the web. If the thesis is this sucks, that it's hard to find things, agreed 100%. If the thesis is it should be more like old school television, I disagree. So I actually don't have an answer on this one, Tom. Bryce, what do you want on this?
I mean, I think there are. It's like death by a million cuts, right? Like, for example, HBO Max. I like HBO Max. Every time I go to HBO Max, I type in HBO Max in my web browser, and it says, "Oh, don't you want to pay for HBO Max?" Like, I go and it gives me the landing page, and I go to log in. Oh, it must have logged me out. No, it knew I was logged in, and then it takes me to the profiles, and then it takes just that one extra little click of like, you don't even know I'm logged into your service. Like, that's the level of incompetence here.
It's a personal affront at that point.
It's just I don't like to throw the word lazy around, but it feels a little lazy. I clicked HBO Max. You have my cookie. Let me see the thing.
You know
please,
what? I will back your play. It does. It whether or not it is lazy, who knows what they're doing behind the scenes.
Who knows?
It definitely feels lazy. Every single service.
Yeah.
That carousel that tells you to watch a thing that you've already watched is so annoying, right? In so many services, when you're like, yeah, no, I've already watched all of that. And then you want to continue watching the thing you started and you have to work to find it. I thought it was interesting that they compared that in Diaz's article to having to run to the back of the grocery store to get the staples because they want you to pass by all the impulse buy items.
Well, and there is, I think the example they put was milk. The question is, why isn't milk up at the front of the grocery store? And the cynical answer is so that you're forced to go buy all the other options. But there also, at least in that case, there's a logistical answer of maintaining the cold chain, which is you want to keep milk cold the entire journey, and it's a shorter cold chain if it's straight from the truck to the back of the.
But I already have the Hulu Disney bundle. Just log me into Hulu. I go to Hulu.com. Let me be logged in. Don't sell me on the thing I already got.
So there's also another thing when it comes to tactical. Here's a fun game. Every time you load up YouTube, you'll notice that the For You feed is comprised of 3 different things. Things it already know you've watched. That's why in the recommended for you see videos you've already watched before, because 1/3 of the people want to go back and revisit those videos. The other will be more of things that you're subscribed to and it knows you like. So a new episode of blank or whatever. And then 1/3 will be maybe try one of these on for size.
New
I
to
know
you.
you've never heard of it. Yeah, exactly. So if we're applying that same method, I don't think that's going to go away. I don't think there's any way that once you watch a show, it won't show up in a carousel beforehand. But knowing that there's that, 1, 2, 3 of do you want something familiar? Do you want something mostly familiar? Do you want something completely new? I don't think we're going to fix humans in that way.
You know what would be nice is a history button on the apps. Like if I fall asleep watching a show, it's over for that show. I will have to manually type in the name of it to search it because it will not show up on my continue watching if my continue watching even shows up anymore. None of them let you see the things that you've watched lately. Like this is something for us. We would use that all the time of, I was just watching this. None of them even have that.
All right. Okay. I've got 2 solutions. One is a personal one that I use, and the other one is hope for the future. The one that I use is available on Apple TV. I think Roku and Google may have similar things here, but I haven't bothered to try to set them up because I use those platforms less frequently. In Apple TV, you can change a setting to say, don't show me recommendations at the top of the home screen. Show me continue watching. It changes your entire experience. Suddenly, you never see home screens, almost ever, because your next Ted Lasso just shows up at the top of the home screen when you turn on the Apple TV and you click it, it goes into the app, it starts the show, and you're done. If you have occasional things that you haven't started watching yet, you can just do a search. And with Apple TV, you can do it with voice. You press the side button, you say, find me the thing. But those are the only times I ever have to start a show by not going into the top, unless it breaks down. It's not perfect because sometimes the apps will give you the wrong show. The tracking will fail sometimes, but I'd say more than 90% of the time, 92% of the time it works. And it keeps me from having to go through the home screens. And it makes me that much more frustrated when I do have to go to a home screen because I'm on another platform and I'm like, oh, this is a nightmare. How do you find anything?
Can I
hope? Yeah, go ahead.
As long as we're piling on, can I just give a shout out? Like one thing. This is a segment called Brian Says, Knock It Off. Hey, Apple TV Plus. When you show a bunch of episodes, don't show episodes that aren't out yet. What are you doing? Knock it off. I don't need to feel like I'm 2 episodes behind. When you go into the detail
page for a series, yeah.
Coming this Friday. No.
It's not visually distinct that's coming soon. I know.
Make it transparent or something so you know it doesn't look right.
Something.
Yeah.
Okay, so So there is a setting, and I highly encourage anybody who uses an Apple TV to do that because it will increase the usability quite a bit. Why don't they just make that the default? Well, we've talked about all these kinds of reasons and business reasons, and here's my hope for the future. Those business reasons are changing. Up until now, all of these platforms, all of these channels, all of these apps were in we're in customer acquisition mode. We need to bring in subscribers as much as possible. And what you want then is to show them all the cool stuff you have. So the priority is when you launch the app, we want to see our cool new stuff. And I bet this falls victim to something that I ran into when I was in web design back in the Tech TV days, which is often the designers are told to design to please the executive who launches the page, not to please the user. And what the executives want to see is the breadth of all the great stuff we've got. And so I feel like we're seeing a little bit of that. We are moving from customer acquisition to customer retention. Now we are in consolidation. We're moving into the world where these platforms need to keep you. And the best way to keep you is to keep you happy, make it easy for you to continue watching the things you watch and not go somewhere else. So hopefully the pressures are changing so that designers will be allowed to address some of these issues.
Stated very close. The way I think of it is, we have been obsessed, or these companies have been obsessed with having a very impressive subscriber-based number, a very impressive number of viewer minutes number, not at all obsessed with viewer satisfaction numbers.
Yeah.
And now we're entering the phase where people are like, I'm going to go where it's most pleasant to be now that all of y'all have reconglomerated and I can get anything on any of you.
Yeah, it used to be like, once you get them subscribed, it's, they probably won't unsubscribe. Now we're seeing them unsubscribe. So it's like, how do we stop them from unsubscribing? So hopefully that makes a difference. All right, let's talk about what to watch in Under Surveillance.
Not like real estate. It's all about location.
Under Surveillance.
Hulu released a trailer for Flaming Hot, the movie that tells the story of former Frito-Lay janitor Richard Montañez, who claims he invented Flamin' Hot Cheetos while working at the Frito-Lay company. Movie comes out Hulu June 9th.
I love
Brian,
this story. It's a classic rags to riches story. It's somebody, boots on the ground, having an insight that saved a brand and so on. I was really disappointed by this trailer, and I don't know. I hope it's still possible that the movie itself is going to be great, but boy, did every comedic question mark note in this fall flat for me.
I felt that the story in this trailer was more powerful than the way the trailer tried to sell me the story, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Like the story is so powerful, like you said, that it shined through, and I was like, I'm interested in this. But I agree with you. Like the edit of the trailer made it seem a little goofy and wacky, and I'm sure they can have some fun with the story, but that's really not why I would show up for it.
Yeah.
Season 2 of Good Omens will premiere on Amazon Prime Video July 28th. Season 1 exhausted the source material of the book written by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. And sadly, Neil Gaiman is the only surviving member of that duo. Terry Pratchett has passed away. Gaiman, however, is co-showrunner on Good Omens and says he worked from ideas that he and Pratchett discussed for a second book. But also just tried to make a really solid second season of a TV show based on the same premise. How optimistic are you, Brian?
In terms of the provenance of the IP, I'm not worried about that at all. Like if Neil Gaiman says that he and Terry worked out this stuff, then I believe him. I am deeply concerned with what happens when Neil Gaiman gets behind the camera and runs things. I liked his book, American Gods, very much. Didn't like the TV show very much. That's what I'm mainly concerned with at this point. What about you?
I'm optimistic because Gaiman is pretty good at this stuff. And, American Gods notwithstanding, I think he fought hard to make it work and turned it around in later seasons. I also think that he has a good sense of Pratchett and can be true to the ideals. You've got a strong cast. So I'm 54% optimistic that this will be a great season.
It really sounded like you used a lot of words that would indicate that you were more optimistic than 54%. But
it's above 50, Brian. So
okay, all right.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I maybe my optimism will rise as we get closer to July 28th, see some more trailers and stuff. Also wanted to follow up the conflict of Tony Gilroy's dual role as writer and producer on Andor. We talked about that on a previous episode of Cordkillers. Well, that conflict is over. Gilroy will no longer work on the show until the writers' strike is over. Gilroy stopped all writing activities on May 1st when the strike began, but he was continuing to do producer duties, things like casting and such. But after criticism from fellow writers, he stopped all activities on Andor as of Sunday, May 7th.
Buckle up in our stake bet that we made last week. I'm going to take the over. I think it's going to be a long one.
Yeah, and I think this is hopeful news in a way, because I feel like the possibility of Andor continuing in a way that wasn't as good because you couldn't do writing on it was there. Now it feels like maybe they'll just hold off.
At least we know that Andor will be good or pure, or however you want to phrase it. Yeah.
Unless they made a horrible decision to go forward without Gilroy, which would be even worse. NBC announced its plans for broadcasting the 2024 Summer Olympics from Paris next year. To keep things simple this time around, Peacock will be the place to stream every sport and event. NBC has streamed every sport and event, but they made you go to the NBC Sports app for a lot of it. Peacock had some stuff, and it was really not obvious what stuff was going to be on Peacock and what wasn't. So they're ending that. Peacock gonna have everything. I think NBC Sports app will still have everything if for some reason you really love that interface, but Peacock will have it all. And because of the time difference, this is just mildly interesting. It's not really related to the Peacock stuff, but NBC is going to broadcast 9 hours of daytime live coverage with recaps in prime time. So you'll be able to see things live over broadcast and cable TV as well. 2024 Summer Olympics begin in just over a year, July 26th next year.
Ladies and gentlemen, the winner of the 2024 Olympics is Tom Merritt, who has wished for, I believe, exactly this for the entirety of the run of all versions of this show. Let's hear it for Tom Merritt. Is it everything that you hoped?
I did it. Yeah. No, I didn't do anything, but I have complained about the Olympics and streaming since the frame rate days, and this NBC Sports app was pretty close to what I wanted, like everything in one app. But I did still have some complaints that when you went to Peacock, it was confusing. And gosh, wouldn't it be making more sense to have it on Peacock? So this just sews it right back up. And I'm very pleased that they are making this decision. And I will probably, here's my one last complaint that could pop up, Brian. If I was going to still continue my complaint. The interface on the NBC Sports app got really good. It was really easy to figure out what was live, what the events were. I hope Peacock has just as good of an interface, and it's easy to find. It's one thing to stream everything. It's another thing, as we just were talking about moments ago, to make it easy to find what's on.
I mean, the good news is if you pay for the ad-free version of the Olympics, it'll be ad-free, except for all of the ads for the Peacock
Except for
stuff.
A few ads here and there. Yeah. And then during the Eurovision broadcast this weekend, the BBC released a new trailer and the titles for 3 60th anniversary Doctor Who specials coming later this year. If you recall, David Tennant is back as the Doctor, and Catherine Tate will be returning as Donna Noble. The specials air in November, and the titles are The Star Beast, Wild Blue Yonder, and The Giggle.
I kind of love the idea that just like any doctor can be back at any time now. It's just like, oh yeah, no, that was before the other stuff.
Well, he's actually the 14th Doctor, but just looks like he did when he was the 11th Doctor, which is even
has his
clever
character evolved like Data and Picard, or
yeah. So because the Doctor regenerates every time, and that's why they look different, right? This time, he just happened to regenerate into exactly the same look as he had before, and we don't know why. So that's the mystery. Like, why did he come back as that doctor again? Usually it's a different doctor every time. And so I imagine he goes and finds Catherine Tate's Donna Noble in order to investigate and explain this. It also, on the outside of the story, Russell T Davies is returning to the show as the showrunner. And Christopher Eccleston was the first doctor under Davies, but he was only there a year. Famously has had a little bit of a falling out over something. So it makes sense for Russell T Davies to say, let's celebrate the 60th anniversary by bringing back David Tennant, the popular doctor when I was running the show. And then I'll be able to start with the new doctor, who's also already been cast, who David Tennant will regenerate into later.
Yes. I'm just going to say, like, there's part of me that wants to scream continuity, but then I remember that it's Doctor Who, where you could go anywhere in time and space for any reason.
If this were a Doctor Who show and not a cord-cutting show, I'd be willing to go down that rabbit hole and say, this is perfectly continuous. This is total continuity, because I love the idea that if you can regenerate into anything, then randomly, every so often, you would regenerate into the exact same thing that you'd been before, because that's anything.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about what we've had our eyes on. Brian, what you been watching?
Man, it took a while, but Justin Robert Young convinced me to burrow a tunnel all the way across planet Earth that emerges in Australia, where on the ABC I was able to see Auntie Donna's Coffee Cafe, which is good. If you enjoyed Auntie Donna's Big Ol' House of Fun on Netflix, boy, what if I told you there's a tighter script and better plot through lines, and the comedy is tight. They are clearly at the top of their game. I look forward to whatever comes next after this, but boy, am I having a good time. It's really good.
So what service in Australia is that on?
ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Company. They have their version of like iViewer or something.
And is it broadcast in Australia, or is it just like a digital?
Yeah, it's broadcast.
Wow.
And so,
good for them.
so
that's awesome.
Once you tunnel through the center of
when
the
I
Earth,
visit my nephew lives in Australia.
Perfect. Well, tell your nephew to just get it on demand for free, because it's a broadcast show.
Coffee Cafe.
I was only able to watch it free because I physically went to Australia.
Of course. Yeah. I will make a point of, it's my niece's birthday, and she's also in Australia. So, I'll just have to visit her to watch Coffee Cafe. In fact, I'll have to ask my nephew if he's watching Coffee Cafe.
It's way.
I also, it was tiring, Brian. I did a lot of shuttling to Britain and back.
Oh my God! A lot of tubes about here, Tom.
Yeah. It was a tunnel that I took to see Eurovision. If anybody doesn't know Eurovision, it is been going since the 50s. It's a celebration of music in Europe, but it also reaches outside of Europe. Israel and Australia participate. It's a long story, but it is usually filled with amazing singers and really interesting stage presentations. And you got both this year. In fact, I think it was probably one of the strongest years for music. But it started with a song about Edgar Allan Poe that also threw shade on Spotify's rev share percentage. Finland was one of my faves. A guy who kind of looked like he was dressed as Hulk in mid-transformation as a dancer did an amazing presentation. Croatia did like a meme, basically. Like the whole song was just like it was from something awful or something. Eurovision is a treasure to me. I adore Graham Norton's commentary on the BBC because he sort of pokes fun at things as he goes along, but also gives you insightful information about the contestants. So I like to travel to Britain where you can listen to Graham Norton's commentary. The positive this year was that Eurovision was taking place in the United Kingdom. Ukraine won last year, so they should have hosted, but because of the war, the UK is hosting for Ukraine. And Graham Norton was one of the presenters. So he was both doing the commentary and then running down the stage to present. So I did come back to the U.S. and listen to the Peacock presentation, because for the second year, Peacock streamed Eurovision with Johnny Weir as the commentator. Very different vibe because you're going for a U.S. audience there. But I thought Johnny Weir did a great job as well. And for the first time, Brian, international viewers got to vote.
Was it normally just internal secret judges or?
No. Usually, Eurovision is half the score is made up by a jury of internal judges, like you're saying, and then half the score is compiled from the countries that are participating. So you can do a phone vote, text, or app, and vote for anyone except your country. So if you live in the UK, once voting starts, you can vote for any of the contestants except for the representative from UK to try to balance it out. Up until now, only participating countries could vote. This year, they basically created another country called international votes. So it didn't outweigh the rest of the countries, but it counted. So you were able, if you were a non-competing country's viewer, to cast your vote as well.
So they both acknowledged the fact that a lot of people are watching via tunnel and gave them a vote, but encouraged people not to use tunneling technology.
No, because Peacock is broadcasting it in the U.S.
Oh, okay,
and it's broadcast in other countries as well.
Got it. Okay.
You would
so there is a legal way to
tunnel.
Okay, all right.
If you're not as big of a fan of Graham Norton's commentary as
Got
some people
it.
are.
Okay,
Yeah.
I get you now.
Yeah. So anyway, that was Eurovision this week, and really go look at Finland and Croatia. You can find all the performances on YouTube. Just do Finland, Eurovision, Croatia. Croatia was crazy. All right, Bryce, what should we be on the lookout for?
Hey, I got a comedy special for y'all. This is on Netflix. It's called Baby J. It's the new comedy special from John Mulaney. You might have heard about John Mulaney in the news the past year or so. This is interesting. I think John Mulaney is really funny. I think he's one of the funniest comedians, funniest stand-up comedians, and this special. Okay, hear me out on how this special starts. Okay, the first 10 minutes. He just starts. He doesn't even, there's not even an opening. It just a cold open starts 10 minutes of comedy. And then they talk about his rehab. And it becomes this another hour and a half talking about his experience of being addicted to cocaine and going to rehab, and very openly talking about that experience. At the same time, being very funny about it.
Okay,
with a lot of his style. You get a lot of that. You don't get a lot of some of the other parts of his story that were in the news, some of his relationship things that had gone on. So that kind of gets unsaid, but a lot of how he openly talks about his drug use and his drug rehab is really, really well paced, really well told. And just funny. I was a little worried that John Mulaney would come back and he maybe wouldn't have it. He would have lost that spark or whatever. But I think for telling this story, which is, you can tell he is not proud. He's not proud to have been addicted to cocaine. But he is able to share some of the humor in a way where he laughs first. And so you feel like you can laugh second,
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's great. Are you guys familiar with Mulaney's comedy stand-up?
Only
Somewhat.
by way of headlines.
I've seen him host Saturday Night Live and be guest on various talk shows and stuff like that.
I almost wonder if it would be better, if you haven't seen any of his stand-up, to watch his previous show or previous shows. Maybe what is it? Not the stand-up kid, the comeback kid. There was a Comeback Kid, which is Netflix, and then there was another one. But check it out. This is a new special called Baby J, streaming on Netflix. It's on Netflix, and it's called Baby J. That's where it's streaming. If you've got something we should be on the lookout for, please email it to us. Cordkillers@gmail.com is the email address where you can do that. Thank you.
I don't know how to email, Brian.
No.
I mean, step one, I'm told, because I did a search on my computer.
Computer?
Computer.
Yeah, it's the device.
So hold on. What is that?
I mean, it's a complicated box of machinery that allows you to connect to the internet. Then you can watch what you want when you really would have
That
thought
sounds
you would.
amazing. How would I get one of those?
Well, step
Do I have to
one.
know
Okay, you know what?
someone?
You're right. Let's go to first practices. Doghousesystems.com/rogue is where you want to go. Get a computer first, and I'll explain everything else after. You'll get something bonusy when you sign up. I think it's an SSD right now. But more importantly, you'll be keeping the folks who are keeping us in business. So keep the businesses that keep us in business. Head on over to doghousesystems.com/rogue. Now, once you do get there, Tom, you'll be able to write so many emails.
Oh my
So
gosh.
many that everybody can read them.
You know, what if I just wrote an email to everyone every week?
Yeah, you know what? That's such a good idea. I'm going to hand you this time machine I've been keeping in my back pocket, and I insist you go back in time and start doing it years ago.
I'm definitely going to do that. I'm going to go back several years. I am going to learn what a domain name is, create one at freetomnewsletter.com, and then invite anyone to subscribe to find out what's going on with me, like top 570s tech you missed out on, or where I'm traveling, or what shows I've got coming up. And then you could even just, what if you could just email back to me? If you're like, hey, I really like that, you could just email back.
I'm for it. I vote. You know what? We're the only people who matter. Who votes yes?
I vote yes.
Okay.
Oh, that's unanimous.
For a second, I thought Bryce was about to abstain.
I was a little worried about that. Yeah. I hadn't lobbied him hard enough. freetomnewsletter.com. It's already happened because I'm going to go back in time and make it happen. Let's move on to the front lines.
Front lines!
Wall Street Journal reports that Netflix plans to cut spending by $300 million this year. That means cautioning staff to spend wisely. Maybe get the cheaper lunch, everyone. We don't want layoffs or hiring freezes. And they've said they're not going to do layoffs or hiring freezes. But, smart hiring, going for the veggie sandwich. I don't know what it means. They're gonna try to cut their spending though. Netflix also switched its upfront presentation to advertisers to be virtual. The reason they did that was not necessarily to cut costs, although I imagine it might, but to avoid picketing due to the writers' strike. It had originally planned an in-person presentation for May 17th. They said some stuff about safety, and I'm sure that's part of it. But also, it's just probably not a good look that they would like to avoid.
Again, yet another thread in the increasingly rich crochet that is Brian's increasing confidence that this strike is going to go on for quite a while.
Well, Netflix has a lot of the leverage here, right? So, I would kind of pay attention to them as one of the canaries in the coal mine.
MoffettNathanson put out its latest estimates on cord cutting. Pay TV penetration has dropped to 58.5% of U.S. households, the lowest level since 1992. That was 2 years before the launch of DirecTV. 75.5 million households in the U.S. have cable now, down 7% on the air. So which is more surprising, the fact that we're very low or the fact that we're not even lower?
I feel like at this point, the 58.5% seems like, oh, wow, we really are dropping. Like we're at 1992 levels. The 75.5 million households that we had the year the launch of that we have now still seems high. For 58.5%, doesn't it?
It did to me, and I mean, again, we've been predicting this trend for a hot minute. Not sure if we're ahead or behind of schedule.
Yeah, almost. Maybe that means we're on schedule. If we're just checking in, here's where we are. DAZN, spelled DAZN, has joined a global task force to shut down unauthorized sports streams online. I've been wondering when the Eye of Sauron would come to these, because they seem to be pretty proliferate across the internet. This alliance also includes Amazon, Apple, NBC, Netflix, Disney, Sony, and Warner Brothers. So sure, DAZN, as a big sports international broadcaster, probably wants to keep all those folks happy. Why not join their alliance?
Yeah. Meanwhile, AMC Networks reached 11.5 million streaming subscribers on all of its platforms, but that's down 300,000 in just 1 year. The company still hopes to reach 20 to 25 million subscribers by 2025. Sorry, if you heard a chuckle, it was because I was chuckling at that optimistic. projection.
They're hopeful, Brian. Don't take away their hope.
I mean, I am hopeful that I will be granted the gift of flying very shortly. Very hopeful.
I'm hopeful for you. Yeah. AMC Networks maybe become an add-on on more platforms.
Yep.
All right. Let's talk about some other notes here. Fox announced that it's canceling Fantasy Island after 2 seasons. If you're thinking there were 2 seasons of a new Fantasy Island on Fox, well, you're probably part of the reason it got canceled. Somehow, and just like that, the Sex and the City sequel series is getting a 2nd season on Max. Candice Bergen will return as an editor at Vogue. She played that role in Sex and the City. And Gloria Steinem will appear playing herself. Starz released a trailer for season 7 of Outlander. That's returning on June 16th. Apple TV Plus released a trailer for season 2 of Foundation. That's the series based on the Isaac Asimov books, returning to Apple TV July 14th, beginning a season of 10 episodes. Netflix revealed the episode titles, cast members, and plot descriptions for season 6 of Black Mirror. That's coming on June 29th. 5 episodes will include appearances from Selma Hayek, Aaron Paul, Zazie Beetz, and more.
So I didn't make it all the way through season 1 of Foundation. I assume you did, Tom.
I did, yeah.
And
it was variable, but overall I liked it, and I actually really liked the way they brought it home at the end. I thought it was well shot, well acted. Maybe a little long in the pacing, but then that's also some people say a criticism of the source material from Asimov. They definitely changed a lot of things to make TV out of it, and I didn't mind personally any of the things they changed to make TV out of it, though I know some Asimov purists weren't too happy, but that's pretty par for the course, I think. Yep. That's the notes on Foundation. All right, let's get to the dispatches from the front. Dr. Calhoun is pointing out that it's Zazie Betts. My mispronunciation. I apologize. Thank you, Dr. Calhoun, for that. So Scott from Houston writes, "Hey guys, what do I do if my favorite shows get delayed because of the writer's strike? Go to my long list of shows I always intended to watch but never had time. This strike could last for a year, and I'd still never run out of things to watch." And then Chris added on to that, "I think the writer's strike will be the longest anyone has seen, and the Directors Guild won't go on strike, according to my instructor at a film school, who's a member of the Directors Guild."
Yeah, more threads, make buckle up. Enough threads make a seatbelt, and a seatbelt will buckle up for a long strike.
I still have the gut feeling that it will wrap up in like September, like in the autumn. That's when it'll
4 months.
Yeah, that still would be the longest strike ever, right? Yeah.
It would be short of the longest ever, I think.
22 weeks was the longest, right?
100 days or something?
22
or
weeks
the last
is
one was 100
how many months? 5 months, so...
Yeah. 5.5 months?
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, so I think it'll be short of that one. But I think it will, because that one began in March and ended in August, that longest one. This one began in May, so a little later. But I still think they'll want to resolve it before the holiday season.
By the way, just a side note on that strike as it unfolds, I'm seeing more headlines bringing up AI in the middle of it, which I don't think was one of the stated purposes of the strike to begin with, but almost certainly will be part of the stopgap solution that various networks and production companies are going to engage with.
I feel like it's so overestimated on both sides of this argument. It was in there when they struck on May 1st that they have some demands around AI. I also think it's such a theoretical situation, and the writers could use a lot of these tools to help them. They just want to make sure that doesn't mean they get paid less if they're using these tools to help themselves.
Or
I think that's fair.
Remember, of course, currency is a time. So let's say right now they're given 3 weeks to produce one script.
Yeah, right.
If I were a writer, I wouldn't want to be told, and have it in 1 week. We know you're using AI. That's something
I think that is a reasonable element, because they are trying to make sure that writers get paid for full work and not these mini rooms. And that seems to be the bigger deal here. But yeah, AI is going to keep being a headline in this, whether it's a real thing in the negotiating room or not. Adam had a random thought of the day. Where's the Netflix category called easy to follow while looking at my phone the whole time?
Well, they abbreviate it. They also replace many of the words, but it comes out as HGTV. There is an entire category of what we charitably call waterfall television that is meant to, oh, that room is messy. Now it is clean. So I'm sure you can find something similar.
I've also,
But Netflix, but he's talking about Netflix. Netflix doesn't have that category.
They have some home and gardenish stuff. Don't they?
That's actually a good question. Cordkillers@gmail.com. What is the closest thing to search for on Netflix that'll give?
I've seen it listed as action movie. Quite okay. But yes, do send us those cordkillers@gmail.com, and we will read them right here in this section of Cord Killers. Thank you everybody for being with us. Thank you for supporting us at Patreon. Our website is cordkillers.com. Our email address is cordkillers@gmail.com, and we are live on twitch.tv/Night Attack Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. We will talk to you then.
Hey, Tom Merritt, what's going on?
I'm just hanging out here watching this scroll go by. What are you doing?
Trying to set up a bit where we thank our beautiful, beautiful patrons, all these wonderful names.
I'm sorry, I'm too distracted looking at these beautiful, beautiful patron names going by. Look at that one. I mean, if you wanted to be one of these people, patreon.com/cordkillers would be the place to go.
I mean, they're scratching our itch, like, because we're addicted.
As long as it's consensual, like,
we're addicted to their money.
And love. Might as well face it.
Well, God damn it.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.